When the going gets tough and I thought of quitting, I get stuck and entangled with my destiny. I heard your voice and I keep on running, knowing that the master's calling. I'm feeling irate, I'm feeling irate, I'm feeling irate.
Our past lay a bunch of consciousness, so we learn from the past, the present, and the future will be better. And we are not against any French colony, we are not against any English colony. All we are saying here, a child mature enough to be on his own. We're not going to be milking by the imperialism. It's time for you to leave us. We are saying it's time that we have to monitor and do things by ourselves. Time has come for us to take every responsibility, accountability on our shoulder. We can, and no one can say we can't. This is 24th century. This is not 17th century, 18th century, 19th century, 20th century. 400 years ago, it's a new fresh air we are on. Our children are a lot, our people are a lot, and it is time that we do it on our way. Yes, our problem, nobody knows it better than we Africans. Our problem can only be solved by we people who know the issues. We are capable, and we come to the point of understanding. Our past is our conscious. It's all about that. Yes, with that coming out from our own mistakes that we had, and the consciousness of life, still keep it in the mind, the soul. And that's why we are trying now to amend it. After 400 years ago, it's enough for us to come to a point of understanding. Even though they call us the third world, we act so slow. The Africa is slow. They talk about only love. All that nation has nuclear weapons except the Africa country, because Africa always like to say, sir, yes I do that, yes sir. Dancing to the tune of imperialism. The African dance to the tune of the imperialist. It's time for you to give space to the indigenous citizens of Africa. When we need you for assistance, yes, we will let you know. And you are not a foe, whether it's a Francophone or Anglophone or any of the European colonies. We are still with you guys, but this time we're gonna take a lead for our productivities, governmental system, pragmatism towards African states is needed by the citizens, because we know our problem more than any foreigners. People will say, okay, you know your problem more than the foreigners, but why are you living in foreign? Because the foreign colony, they makes us to dance to their tune. They print our money in it for our country, and we have to ask them permission to use our currency. They will print it for us, not we printing it for our citizens. We don't print and control things by ourselves, but the colony, the imperialists, are still in control in Africa currencies. Devaluations of Africa currency, corruption, looting the African minerals, slavery, apartheid. Africa will never forget. Sons and daughters of Africa, educated or not educated, whatever you're doing in a way of to earn your living, it can be artistic, it can be academically, it can be skills, it can be talent. All this, we want your inclusiveness, because any part of this earth today, if you travel, you will still see the Africans there. None of the countries in this earth now that you will go that you will say, I don't find the Africans. We all scatter from Africa because due to our mismanagement of our capitals by those leaders, selfishness, just for their own accountability. So don't be afraid of those scavengers, neither the lion on the ground, neither the shark on the sea. We are gonna live and we're all gonna pass. Enough has been said. Let's walk to walk, not talk to talk. Thank God we have a leader emerge from Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré.
Independence and total freedom, President Ibrahim Traoré. The AES belongs to all Africans who desire sovereignty, independence, and total freedom. President Ibrahim Traoré, Ouagadougou, December 31, 2024. AIB, the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, founded by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, belongs to all Africans who are fighting for their freedom, sovereignty, and independence of their countries.
Let's give this brother full support. Back him up because he has been tempted several times, 10 times, 11 times by coup plotters, by those imperial who try to steal, control African countries. But this time is real. We will never give up. I can't come to your house and control what you are doing in your house. I came to you as a visitor, as a foreigner. What you decide to do with your home, I have nothing to do with it. You can only invite me. I'm just a visitor, so I can't take over, control what you are doing there. That I have to order you to give me this and that. No, I only accept what you give to me as a visitor with the due respect. Are we all clear? Thank God President Ronald Reagan spoke to Gorbachev. Tear that wall down.
If you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And now, there's a lot of progress taking place in Russia now. And Putin, he is doing a great job. And that's why he's there for long. And if he's not doing the right job, I don't think the indigent or citizen will allow him to be in that position. So, all our allies, Africa, we invite every country to trade with our people. We are not going to say no one is welcome to Africa. We welcome every one of you, including those imperialists, the French and English colonies. They are still our good friends, good brothers, good fathers. But it's time now to say thank you. We take care of our own thing now. We're capable. Can you let us lead? Sorry. And if you say no, and you try to ambush us systematically, crucify us behind, time to say, bring it on. Bring it on. Sons and daughters of Africa. In all type of skills, in all type of talent, in all type of academic, this three field, the Africa sons and daughters, they are all in it. And they're all doing good. So, why can't you give your equivalent opinion? It is not only those who has the PhD has that momentum to voice out what will help the African progressively for the improvement of making the country better for everyone. So, if you smell what Captain Ibrahim Traoré is cooking, one more time. If you smell what the Captain Ibrahim Traoré is blowing on the air, is blowing on the air, no retreat. no surrender is blowing on the air, no retreat, no surrender. And we are not against French colony, we are not against English colony. All we are saying here, a child mature enough to be his master is cooking. Thump up to the brother here, man. Yes. Jah guide and bless and protect I and our children. Forward ever, backward never. Forward ever, backward never. And that's how it should be. A child mature enough to be on his own. We're not going to be milking by neo-colonization. The imperialists, it's time for you to leave us. You are still respected and nothing about disrespecting. Time has come. We are saying it's time that we have to monitor and do our things by ourselves. Time has come for us to take every responsibility, accountability on our shoulder. We can get it on. Get it on. It's all about love.
According to Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the AES is called upon to become a strong union in all areas, and particularly with regard to diplomacy, defense, security, and, above all, development. Several actions are currently underway to be able to structure this alliance and establish it because it is the beginning of a union in sovereignty, in total freedom, so that Africa can take an example from this alliance and be able to shine, added the president of FASO. The AES was established in May 2024 to pool development efforts between the three member countries and help them counter insecurity and external subversion. It has just acquired a logo representing a baobab, symbol of eternal Africa, a radiant sun, and 3 stars shining at the top, representing the 3 founding countries of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Speech of Burkina Faso, President Captain Ibrahim Traoré on the all-African countries joining AES. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pride and conviction that I stand before you today to speak about a vision that has captured the aspirations of countless Africans across our beloved continent. This vision is embodied in the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a union founded by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, with a resolute aim to serve as a beacon of sovereignty, independence, and total freedom for all Africans. As we enter the year 2025, the AES is not merely a regional alliance. It is a clarion call to all African nations to unite under the principles of mutual respect, solidarity, and collective development. The AES was born in May 2024, at a critical juncture in our history. Faced with common challenges, insecurity, external subversion, and the need for accelerated development, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger came together to forge this union. The symbolism of our alliance's logo, featuring a baobab tree, a radiant sun, and 3 shining stars, speaks to our collective mission. The baobab represents the eternal strength and resilience of Africa. The sun, our aspirations for enlightenment and growth. And the 3 stars, the unity of our founding nations. It's an open invitation to every nation on this continent to join a transformative movement that aims to redefine Africa's place in the world. One of the greatest strengths of the AES lies in its potential to unify African nations in their diplomatic efforts. For too long, Africa's voice has been fragmented on the global stage. With a united voice, we can challenge the structural inequalities that have perpetuated our dependence on foreign powers. The AES provides a platform for all African nations to collaborate in shaping policies that reflect our collective aspirations. Security challenges remain a significant obstacle to Africa's progress. These issues transcend national boundaries and require a coordinated response. Sharing intelligence and coordinating military efforts, we have made significant strides ensuring the safety of our citizens. Imagine the impact if all African nations joined this effort. Together, we can establish a robust continental defense mechanism that not only deters external threats, but also empowers African nations to resolve conflicts internally.
Today we're going to delve into one of the darkest chapters of European colonialism, a story of exploitation, greed, and inhumanity that is still haunting us today. Today, we're going to talk about the notorious King Leopold II of Belgium and his brutal rule over the Congo Free State. Now, some of you may think that history can be dry and boring, but the story we're about to unfold is anything but that. This is a story of a king who was driven by his insatiable lust for power and wealth, and who saw an entire nation as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. Under Leopold's rule, the Congo Free State became a hell on earth for the local population. Millions of Congolese people were forced into labor camps and subjected to brutal working conditions, while others were killed or maimed for resisting or failing to meet the king's quotas. The exploitation was so severe that the population of the Congo fell from 20 million to 10 million during Leopold's reign, and yet, this dark chapter in history is still not widely known. Many people have never even heard of King Leopold II, let alone the atrocities he committed in the Congo. But as we'll see today, the legacy of his reign is still felt in the Congo and throughout the world. It is a story that deserves to be told. So, without further ado, let's dive into the horrors of King Leopold's rule over the Congo Free State. In the late 19th century, European powers were on a scramble to colonize Africa, exploiting its resources and people for their own economic gain. King Leopold II of Belgium, a cunning and ambitious ruler, saw this as an opportunity to build his own personal wealth and power. Being a shrewd monarch, he saw the need for Belgium to have a colony like other European powers. He was also a ruthless businessman who saw the potential for enormous wealth to be gained from the exploitation of Africa's natural resources. However, Leopold's ambitions were not limited to economic gain. He was also motivated by a deep-seated racism that saw black people as inferior to white people. In his view, Africans were not capable of governing themselves, and they needed European guidance to develop. This racist ideology provided the justification for the brutal exploitation of the Congo and its people. Leopold chose Congo, a vast region in Central Africa, for its abundant natural resources, including rubber, ivory, and minerals. In 1876, he established the International African Association, a philanthropic organization that aimed to promote scientific research and humanitarianism in Africa. He claimed that his mission in the Congo was to bring civilization and Christianity to the people of Africa. However, his true motives were purely economic. He aimed to use the organization to facilitate his plans for colonial expansion in Congo. In 1879, Leopold hired the explorer Henry Morton Stanley to undertake a mission to the Congo River Basin with the aim of establishing Belgian control over the region. He hired Stanley to explore and map the Congo. Stanley would go on to sign treaties with several local chiefs, claiming to establish trade agreements and alliances. But in reality, these treaties gave Leopold control over the land and its resources. Stanley was successful in his mission, and Leopold used the information he gathered to establish a colony in 1885. This was a vast territory covering over 900,000 square miles in the heart of Africa. The tyrant king claimed the Congo Basin as his own personal property, not as a colony of Belgium, but as his own private estate. He called it the Congo Free State, a misleading term given that the people living there were anything but free. Leopold ruled the Congo Free State as his personal property, with the Congolese people serving as his subjects. His reign was marked by a reign of terror and brutality, in which millions of Congolese were enslaved, tortured, and killed. Under Leopold's rule, the Congolese people were subjected to forced labor, brutal violence, and systemic exploitation. His primary interest was the rubber trade, and he forced the Congolese people to work in rubber plantations under horrific conditions. The people were beaten, mutilated, and killed if they failed to meet their daily rubber quotas. But Leopold's brutality was not limited to the rubber trade. He also forced the Congolese people to mine for copper and diamonds, while the profits from these resources went directly into his own pockets. The Congolese people were also subjected to forced labor on construction projects, such as the building of the Matadi-Kinshasa Railway, which claimed the lives of thousands of workers due to disease, starvation, and brutal working conditions. Leopold also employed a private army, the Force Publique, to enforce his rule and maintain control over the Congolese population. This army was notorious for its brutality, and its soldiers were known to commit horrific acts of violence against Congolese men, women, and children. His agents used a variety of tactics to terrorize and subjugate the Congolese. Some cut off the hands of those who failed to meet their quotas, while others would hold family members hostage until the quota was met. They also instigated conflicts between different ethnic groups, which further destabilized the region and created an environment of fear and mistrust. The Congo Free State became known as a place of unspeakable horror. The atrocities committed during Leopold's rule in Congo were not hidden from the rest of the world. Reports of these atrocities reached Europe and the United States, sparking outrage and condemnation. The public outcry led to the formation of the Congo Reform Association, a group of activists who campaigned for an end to the atrocities in Congo. Despite this, Leopold attempted to justify his actions by portraying himself as a benevolent leader who was bringing civilization and progress to a backward and uncivilized people. He claimed that his rule was necessary to bring order and stability to the region and to protect the Congolese people from the alleged savagery of other African tribes. However, these justifications were nothing more than thinly veiled excuses for the exploitation and oppression that took place under his rule. In reality, Leopold was exploiting the Congo for his own personal gain, and the Congolese paid the price with their lives. One of the most infamous incidents that took place during Leopold's reign was the massacre of the people of Lusanga. In 1895, his agents ordered the village to provide 3,000 kilograms of rubber, which was an impossible quota to meet. When the villagers failed to do so, the agents descended upon the village and killed over 300 people, including women and children. They then cut off the hands of the dead and forced the survivors to carry them as proof that they had killed the required number of people. The brutality of Leopold's reign in Congo was not limited to violence and exploitation. His agents also brought diseases such as smallpox and sleeping sickness, which decimated the population. They destroyed the social and economic fabric of Congolese society, erasing cultural traditions and forcing people to abandon their way of life. Leopold's brutality in Congo was so extreme that it is estimated that up to 10 million people died as a result of his policies. This figure represents approximately half of the population of Congo at the time. The horrors of the Congo Free State were exposed by a number of brave individuals, including the journalist Edmond Morel and the missionary Roger Casement. Their work helped to raise awareness of the atrocities being committed in the Congo and contributed to the eventual end of the Mad King's rule. Edmond Morel was a British shipping clerk who became aware of the exploitation in the Congo while working for a Liverpool-based trading company. He noticed that ships were arriving in Liverpool filled with ivory and rubber, but they were not returning to Africa with any goods. He suspected that the ships were being used to transport slaves, and he began investigating further. Morel soon discovered that the ships were being used to transport rubber and ivory that had been obtained through forced labor. He founded the Congo Reform Association in 1904 to raise awareness of the situation and to lobby for change. Morel's efforts were instrumental in turning public opinion against Leopold and his regime. Roger Casement was an Irish nationalist who had previously worked for the British government. He was appointed British consul for the Congo Free State in 1901 and was tasked with investigating allegations of human rights abuses. What he discovered was shocking. Casement found evidence of widespread torture, mutilation, and murder in the Congo. He documented his findings in a report that became known as the Casement Report. The report detailed the horrific conditions under which the Congolese people were forced to live and work. Casement's report brought the situation in the Congo to light and convinced the British government to take action. In 1908, the British government organized an international conference in Brussels to discuss the future of the Congo. The conference led to the end of Leopold's rule over the Congo Free State. His reign over the Congo came to an end in 1908. when Belgium took over the administration of the colony, partly in response to the global outrage caused by the revelations of atrocities. However, the Congolese people continued to suffer under Belgian colonial rule, and it was not until the mid-20th century that they were finally able to gain independence. To bring freedom to the Congolese people, Congolese activists fought against slavery and oppression on their people. One of the most prominent of these activists was Simon Kimbangu, a Congolese Christian preacher who founded the Kimbanguist Church in the early 20th century. Kimbangu preached against the oppression of the Congolese people and was arrested and imprisoned by the colonial authorities, where he died in 1951. Another important figure in Congolese history is Patrice Lumumba, who led the country to independence from Belgium in 1960. Lumumba was a prominent anti-colonial activist and was elected as the first Prime Minister of Congo after independence. However, Lumumba's leadership was short-lived, as he was overthrown in a coup d'état just months after taking office. Despite his brief tenure, Lumumba's legacy as a leader who fought for the rights of the Congolese people is still remembered today. He is celebrated as a hero in Congo and across Africa for his role in securing independence from colonial rule. Leopold's reign was characterized by a mix of ambition, greed, and ruthlessness. We can say Leopold's legacy in Belgium is mixed. On the one hand, he is remembered as a visionary leader who transformed Belgium into a modern, industrialized nation. He played a significant role in promoting economic development, expanding the railway network, and modernizing the country's infrastructure. On the other hand, Leopold's involvement in the Congo has left a dark stain on his legacy. His regime's brutal treatment of the Congolese people has been widely criticized, and his actions in the Congo have been described as nothing short of genocide. As we have seen, Leopold's quest for wealth and power resulted in the deaths of millions of Congolese people and untold suffering and exploitation. The numbers are staggering, with millions losing their lives either through direct violence, starvation, or disease. And yet, despite this immense human toll, Leopold was able to maintain his grip on power and his reputation as a civilizing force in Africa. But let us not forget the resilience and bravery of the Congolese people, who resisted and fought against this brutal colonial rule. From the anti-slavery campaigns of early Congolese activists like Simon Kimbangu to the uprising led by Patrice Lumumba, the people of Congo have shown time and time again that they will not be silenced or oppressed. As we reflect on this dark chapter in history, we must acknowledge the ongoing legacy of colonialism and its impact on the world today. It is only by confronting the past and working toward justice and reconciliation that we can build a more equitable and just future for all.
Let's go back in time. During the colonial period, European powers carved up Africa like it was a pie at a Christmas dinner, drawing arbitrary borders that had nothing to do with the existing ethnic, tribal, or cultural lines. These borders were designed to keep people divided, ensuring that no single group could become powerful enough to challenge their colonial masters. Farrakhan's message is clear. If Black people want to truly break free from Western control, they have to stop letting the West pit them against each other. It's not about tribes, religions, or nationalities. It's about recognizing a shared struggle. But even unity isn't enough if Black people continue to rely on Western institutions for their spiritual and intellectual guidance. That's where reclaiming a deeper sense of identity comes into play. Let's get uncomfortable for a moment. What if we told you that the very religions that many Black people hold dear were weaponized against them? Yep, you heard that right. Farrakhan doesn't shy away from this explosive topic, arguing that Christianity, and to some extent, Islam, were tools used by the West to keep Black people subservient. Here's how it works. During the colonial era, European powers didn't just show up with guns and chains, they came with Bibles too. Missionaries were often the first to set foot in African villages, preaching about a savior who would reward obedience and punish rebellion. It was the perfect setup. Convince people that their suffering was part of a divine plan, and they'll accept their oppression with open arms. Think about it. How many times have you heard phrases like, "Turn the other cheek," or "The meek shall inherit the earth"? These weren't just spiritual teachings. They were psychological tools designed to pacify the oppressed. The message was clear. Don't resist. Don't fight back. Just endure, and you'll be rewarded in the afterlife. But here's the harsh reality. That promise of heaven was a scam. The only people benefiting from that setup were the colonizers who got to exploit land, labor, and resources while keeping their victims docile. But Farrakhan doesn't stop there. He points out that even today, Western powers use religion as a means of control. And let's not even get started on how Western media demonizes any black leader who dares to mix faith with politics, unless, of course, they're parroting Western ideals. Have you ever wondered why history books seem to praise the West like it's the world's savior? How much of that can be true? What if we told you that it's all part of a well-crafted narrative designed to keep black people right where the West wants them? Confused, subjugated, and obedient. It's about finding faith that empowers, not faith that enslaves. But before black people can fully embrace their spiritual freedom, they must first recognize the West's ultimate intention, to keep them forever in chains, both mental and physical. The Western world is the greatest liar in history. But here's the twist. It's not just about telling lies. It's about creating an entire system where deception becomes second nature. Minister Louis Farrakhan argues that the West didn't just stumble into its role as the world's master of manipulation. It was designed that way. Now, whether or not you believe this story literally, the metaphor is clear. The white man's rise to power wasn't through brute force alone. It was through cunning, manipulation, and lies. Take the Western education system, for example. Ever wonder why the curriculum is filled with stories of European explorers discovering lands that were already populated? The system is designed to keep black people mentally enslaved, filling their minds with a history that erases their ancestors' achievements and keeps them looking to the West for validation.
Every time they show Africa, they attempt to show you our people in a savage condition. They want you and me to focus our minds on that continent and that continent alone. Listen.
But this isn't just about the past. The West's tactics have evolved. Today, they control the narrative through the media, pumping out stories that demonize black nations while glorifying their own. But if the West's entire foundation is built on deception, what impact does that have on the psyche of black people? And more importantly, how deep does this deception run? Let's face it, physical chains may have been broken, but mental chains? Those are a lot harder to shake off. Farrakhan doesn't hold back when he talks about the slave mentality that still grips black people today. You see, after centuries of being told that your worth is tied to what the white man thinks, it's hard to unlearn that kind of conditioning. Why? Because there's always the fear that their words might offend their white benefactors. They're playing a game rigged against them, convinced that if they just play it well enough, they'll finally be accepted. But here's the thing. True liberation can't come from appeasing the oppressor. It starts with reclaiming the mind. That's why Farrakhan's message is so powerful. He's calling for a mental revolution, a breaking of the chains that have kept black people from seeing their true worth.
For Allah says in the Quran, I made you into tribes and families and nations, that you may know one another and not despise one another. Wherever you see a proliferation of many tribes of one people, then the people have lost the light of civilization, because the light of civilization would cause an evolutionary motion in the people, which would bring them from a tribe into a nation.
The black man and woman are the original humans on this planet. That's not just rhetoric. It's backed by science, anthropology, and archaeology. Every time you see a Hollywood film about ancient Egypt, who's playing the pharaohs? It's almost always white actors, right? But let's get real. Ancient Egypt, with its grand temples, advanced medicine, and incredible architecture, was built by black hands. And that's just the beginning. Civilizations in West Africa, like Mali and Songhai, were pioneering universities, mapping the stars, and developing medicine while Europe was still fumbling through the Dark Ages. But why does the West go to such great lengths to bury this history? Simple, because knowledge is power. If Black people understood that their ancestors were not just victims of colonization, but pioneers of human civilization, it would shatter the narrative of Western superiority. Farrakhan drives this point home. Knowing your past is the first step toward reclaiming your future. But it's not just about history books and documentaries. The erasure of Black history has real-world implications. When Black people are disconnected from their roots, they are easier to manipulate. If you don't know who you are, it's a lot easier for someone to tell you who to be. That's why reclaiming identity is not just about pride, it's about survival. Yet, as we'll see, the West hasn't just stolen history. They've built their entire civilization on the backs of Black knowledge and innovation. So, what's the real story behind the so-called Western advancements? You know that old saying, history is written by the victors? Well, it's more accurate to say that history is written by thieves. In revealing how Western civilization has systematically looted the knowledge and achievements of Black people, repackaging it as their own. Think of it as intellectual colonization. Let's take ancient Egypt, for instance. It's widely celebrated as the cradle of Western civilization. But hold up, wasn't Egypt in Africa? And weren't the people who built the pyramids Black? Somehow, that part always gets left out of the narrative. Instead, we get fed stories about how the Greeks and Romans were the true geniuses of the ancient world, conveniently ignoring where they learned their craft. The great philosophers like Pythagoras, Socrates, and Plato, they were students of African scholars. But it doesn't stop at ancient history. The West has continued this intellectual theft into the modern age. Innovations in medicine, agriculture, and even technology have roots in Africa that are often erased or ignored. Ever heard of the Dogon people of Mali? They had mapped the Sirius star system centuries before European astronomers, because the West's domination depends on convincing Black people that they are inferior. But there's a brutal truth. If you want to control a group of people, the easiest way to do it is to turn them against each other. Conflicts in African nations are often portrayed as tribal or ethnic. It's because the West has a vested interest in keeping these divisions alive. As long as Black people are fighting amongst themselves, they'll never unite against their real oppressors. It's the classic game of divide and conquer. By stoking tensions and playing one group against another, the West ensures that Black nations remain politically unstable and economically dependent. If there's one thing Farrakhan wants to hammer home, it's this. The West has no intention of ever letting Black people truly be free. Sure, they'll talk about progress, equality, and development. But beneath the surface, their game plan hasn't changed since the days of slavery. It's all about keeping Black people divided, dependent, and distracted.